I am soldering this board SMD using a iron, which definitely is more difficult than through hole. And usually what I've been doing is I will apply a little bit of solder to one of the pads. I did that for the IC, and then I placed the IC and heated up the single pad, and then once that kind of pins the chip in place, and then you can go around and hit all the pads. The capacitors and resistors are actually, in some ways, they may be more challenging because of how small they are. So this is a 10K resistor that I am installing, and I could just set it on with tweezers, but this little grabby thing that I have is cool. It's made out of aluminum, so that whatever part you're soldering to, it heat sinks the heat away from the component, since a lot of chips are heat sensitive. So I'll just put it down kind of where I want it, hit it with heat, and then actually I may have to release some. Look at it, make sure it's laying flat, which it is. Usually when you solder by hand, you do your best to keep the components straight, like not rotated, but you're only as good as the steadiness of your hand. Whenever you use a stencil and solder paste and you put it in the oven, the surface tension of the solder melting, or liquid solder, actually pulls the components into alignment. So even if you don't place them perfectly, they will end up looking amazing. But when you're doing it by hand, you don't really have that option as much. So I'm going to attach these through-hole right angle connectors, but I don't want them to stick out too far in the back, just because I don't think I need to. So I'm going to trim them a little bit, and then I'll solder them on the top and the bottom, and it should still be nice and strong. So I'll just take off maybe not quite a 1/16 of an inch. Let's do a little more than that. So they just barely come through. That should be fine. And whenever I attach headers or pin headers, I usually do the same method where I just hit one pin, and then that way I can now, oh, I didn't quite get enough on there. Okay. So as long as I don't touch the pin that I'm soldering to, because it will be hot, I can manually adjust it. since that worked so well, I'm gonna do it on the other side. I think I need a little more solder on some of these. That one by the S was the one that I used to pin the header in place, which I only put a tiny bit of solder on, just enough to hold it, then I can go back and add.